Although nowadays not so much, as long as I can remember, Chuck E. Cheese has been the #1 destination for family fun. But what really makes people go to Chuck E. Cheese for the first time? Or should I say, what is people's first impression of Chuck E. Cheese? And to me, that would be the sign on the outside of the building. I personally grew up with the 1990s Chuck E. Cheese sign, but over the course of their history, they have had many different signage types over the years, and some of them are just weird. But that's what I'll be talking about today, so let's get into it. Over the years, Chuck E. Cheese has expanded into many international markets, with most of these locations outside of the United States being franchised. And while franchised international locations have certain guidelines they must follow, they also get a lot of creative liberties. And while this can be a good thing in certain cases, sometimes these stores make really odd decisions. You guys got a little sneak peek of this sign earlier in the video, but this sign is at a Chuck E. Cheese location somewhere in the Middle East, obviously franchised. And as you can see, something is clearly wrong with Chuck E. on the sign. I don't know if it's just extremely dirty or they got the colors completely wrong. It looks horrible, especially when you compare it to how it's supposed to look. But by far, this is one of the worst Chuck E. Cheese signs I've ever seen, so let's go ahead and move on. Now, to keep on the topic of franchised locations that are located internationally, we're going to go back to 1983 in Puerto Rico, when a franchised Chuck E. Cheese location opened there. And this location seemed like a regular Pizza Time theater, except for the sign on the outside. This location's exterior had no Pizza Time theater branding whatsoever, just Chuck E. Cheese's, and their sign wasn't the regular one. It appears to be a 3D sign of Chuck E., but it's hard to make out. But I've always found that sign to be extremely similar to these Chuck E. Cheese coin banks from the early 1980s. I know the sign is hard to make out, but I don't know, it just looks really similar to these guys, and I hope we get a more clear picture of it someday so we can compare. Now that we've talked about some interesting international Chuck E. Cheese signs, let's go back to the United States. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Tallahassee, Florida location, which was pretty infamous for its interesting looking stage. And I gotta say, their sign was looking rough. Chuck E. literally turned black. I don't know if this is because the sign got burned, it got dirty. I don't think it was always like this, so something happened to it at some point, but man, it was very offsetting. This is what it's supposed to look like, and clearly something went wrong. I also saw this Chuck E. Cheese street sign that seems to have a similar issue, with Chuck E.'s eyes literally turning brown. And these are newer signs from the 2010s. I don't know how they turned so bad so quickly, but yeah. In 2005, Chuck E. Cheese introduced one of their most iconic logos, the purple Avenger thumbs up Chuck E. sign. But what a lot of people don't know is this sign actually had some pretty weird color variants that weren't seen in many places, so let's look at that. First, we have a yellow version of the thumbs up Chuck E. sign. This version is very clearly trying to replicate the thumb Chuck E. sign that came before the thumbs up Chuck E. sign with the yellow, green, and red colors. This sign was exclusive to the Midland, Texas, and Bloomington, Illinois locations. These signs are really confusing though, as at the time those locations opened, stores were getting the pointing Chuck E. logo, not the thumbs up one, so these could have been really early versions of it. Next, there was a red version of this sign located at the Paramus, New Jersey location. I also don't really know why this one exists, but if I had to guess, it's because of strip mall regulations or wherever this store is located. And lastly, the Chuck E. Cheese in Herndon, Virginia actually has a green version of this sign, which was made for the location recently. And if I had to guess, this version probably exists because during this store's 2.0 remodel, for one reason or another, they probably weren't able to take down the old signs, so they just updated them with green, the main 2.0 color. Another weird but cool Chuck E. Cheese sign that's always interested me is this directional Chuck E. Cheese sign where he's pointing. This was oftentimes used in mall locations or locations that weren't easily accessible to show customers where to go to access the store. It of course started out as the 90s Coach Truck version, but later on it would get some interesting variations. For example, a handful of locations changed out the sign to better resemble the Avenger Chucky of the 2000s. I actually think they did a really good job with this sign, as Avenger Chucky looks really good and utilizes the shape of the old Coach Chuck sign really well, minus one little black spot if you look closely. But then, there's this monstrosity. This Chuck E. Cheese sign was located at the Brooklyn, New York location, and clearly was the Coach Chuck version before, but they updated it to be Rockstar Chucky, and well, his shape just does not fill the sign very well at all. You can clearly tell what it used to be, and this sign just looks horrible. I don't even want to look at this thing anymore, so let's go ahead and move on. Another handful of Chuck E. Cheese locations that had the 90s Coach Chuck logo eventually swapped out the sign cover for one that more resembled the 2000s logo. This occurred at a lot of earlier 2005 remodel locations, as well as locations that just weren't able to take down the old sign for whatever reason. But this process was most common on Chuck E. Cheese roadside signs, aka the ones you see from the street that are at the end of the parking lot. Many of these signs were located high above the ground, and it was a lot safer and easier to just replace the cover of the sign than the entire sign in general. I think they did a really good job at reusing the shape of the old sign while making it look like the 2000s version of Chucky. But there's some weird variants we need to go over. For example, when the location in Buford, Georgia got the 2.0 remodel, they reused the old Coach Chuck sign shape again, but with Rockstar Chucky, and it just ended up looking horrible. He didn't fit the shape of the sign at all, so they just painted the background red. And there's another location in Lubbock, Texas that did something similar, except they painted the background white, but it looks just as bad. Then there's this one, which is at a location in Alabama or Georgia, and I think it looks really good. They got the 2.0 logo letter-wise, but kept the old Coach Chuck sign and repainted him green, since, that's the main 2.0 color. And when the Brookfield, Wisconsin location remodeled, they did something really similar, except they had the 2000s updated version of the sign. Now, let's move on to some locations that had unique lettering on their signs. As we all know, a handful of Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater locations survived the bankruptcy and made it into the 90s, and some of these locations actually reused the Pizza Time Theater letters from those locations. For example, here's a former Pizza Time Theater location that got the Coach Chuck sign but kept the Pizza Time Theater lettering, only changing the covers on the sign to make it look like the red to orange fading letters of the 90s logo. It seems like a small handful of locations did this, as here's another one, except they even put the pizza logo from the Chuck E. Cheese's pizza sign under the Pizza Time Theater letters. And here's one that just didn't change the Pizza Time Theater letters at all, keeping them a yellow color. Along with this, a handful of locations got white letters instead of the colored ones on their exterior signs. It's not really known why this is done, but if I had to guess, it probably has to do with city regulations. It's definitely an interesting look, but I honestly prefer the colored letters. Then there's this location in Torrance, California, which along with their Coach Chuck logo, had a unique Chuck E. Cheese lettering. I think it looks really cool and is a nice difference from the regular one. But unique fonts weren't anything new, as even going back to the Showbiz Pizza Place days, certain locations had unique fonts on their signs. As for other random unique signs, this 2.0 location in California got a black background on their 2.0 Chucky logo instead of red. And in rare instances, some 90s remodel locations got Coach Chuck signs that said food, family, and fun. It was even featured on this road sign at an old Arizona location. But I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I've always found interest in the signs at Chuck E. Cheese, as when you go to a location, that's what you see first after all, so I think they're a really important part of the company, and I've always admired them. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.